attention, please. So, my name is Yisrayl, and I like to start serving you forever as our priest assigned very soon. It's now time to start finding your seats for Sabbath services.
Shalom, everyone. My name is daughter of Yisrayl, Abel, Lily, and I want to serve you forever as a priestess starting very soon. It's now a privilege and an honor to present to you the sons and daughters of Yisrayl, Abel, now entering the sanctuary. It's a privilege and an honor to turn it over to one of the daughters of Yisrayl, Abel, Mariah.
Shalom, everyone. My name is Mariah. You may be seated. Second Kepha 3:9. Second Kepha 3:9. Diet is not slack concerning his promise, as some count slackness, but is long suffering towards us. Not only that any should perish, but that all should come to repentance. With this in mind, we should be greatly encouraged that we receive Yahweh's promise. So let's lift up our heads and rejoice, because the joy of our Father is very near. Now I turn it over to the first speaker.
Shalom, everyone. You may be seated. The title of my speech is The Roadmap. You might be wondering, what? A roadmap? Yes, Yahweh gave us His perfect roadmap. It could be called a guide from God worship. Yahweh left nothing for us to wonder about. This map gives us instructions on how we should conduct ourselves, what we should eat, how we should dress, what we should speak about, and how we should obey our parents, their rules, how we should treat each other and the environment. When we look out in the world, we see the suffering and pain that God worship has brought upon the earth. Yahweh has called each and every one of us out of this through our pastor and overseer, Yisrayl Abel Hawkins. In Prohibitive Law number 46, it says, "Do not turn to the ways of God worship and sin." Deuteronomy 17:16. Prohibitive Law number 6, it says, "Do not worship, serve, obey, nor follow the ways of God worship." Deuteronomy 14:15 through 19. So when we go against this perfect roadmap, Yahweh's laws, we are proving ourselves unfit to be a part of His family. I encourage all of us to always keep this perfect roadmap, Yahweh's laws, in the forefront of our minds, so we will not fall back into the ways of God worship. And now I'd like to turn it over to the next speaker.
Shabbat Shalom, great saints of Yahweh, you may be seated. May the peace of Yahweh be with each and every one of you. The title of my speech is God Worship Advocated by Hollywood. I would like to begin with a quote from Overseer Yisrayl Hawkins' sermon date 6/8/1992. It reads, "Now this is the depth of their allegiance. These are the beliefs of the religious world that Satan has kept deceived through her thrills and nonsense approach. The world has fallen for it, brethren. They go for this glitter and glamour and this entertainment that the world offers today." If you'll turn over in your books of Yahweh to page 904, page 904, that's 2 Corinthians 6:17. 2 Corinthians 6:17, it reads, "Therefore come out from among them and be separate, says Yahweh. Do not touch the unclean thing, and I will receive you." As you can see, this scripture is telling us to come out from Satan's world and be separate. This means to separate yourselves from the world in thought and deed. Withdraw your mind from any form of entertainment that comes from the world. That comes from the world, and guard against it. If we are not guarding against it, we are partaking in it. If you turn over to Proverbs 4 verses 23, Proverbs 4 verses 23 on page 498. It reads, "Guard your mind with all diligence, for out of it flows the springs of life." Also turn over to page 982. That's Revelations 18 verses 2. It reads, And he cried mightily with a strong voice, saying, Babylon the Great has fallen, and is become the habitation of demons, and the hold of every foul spirit, and the cage of every unclean and hateful bird. In the first book of Yisrayl, chapter 20, verses 136, over 2 says, verse 10, with all the deceivableness of sin, making you think that this is the best way. This is really being pushed by Hollywood and in the news media. The deceivableness of sin. Please turn over to Romans 12 verses 2. Romans 12 verses 2 says, Do not be conformed to the pattern of this world, but be transformed with the renewing of your mind, that you may be able to rest and prove what is righteous and capable and perfect will, and the perfect will of Yahweh. In conclusion, I want to encourage us to come out from the world and beg Yahweh to lead us out of all forms of God worship, so we can make into Yahweh's kingdom and be those righteous priests and priestesses Yahweh wants us to be. If you would all please stand, I'd like to turn it over to the next speaker.
And now, if you all remain standing, we'll turn it over to the great queens of the House of Yahweh.
Shabbat Shalom, great saints of Yahweh. Please be seated. Okay, so for our introduction this morning, may the peace of Yahweh be with each and every one of us who are here this morning, and also those who are joining us over the media. Now, for our introduction this morning, I want to do a short activity test with you, because I know the great overseer last feast, he gave us a wonderful session program on how to rejoice, when to rejoice, benefits of rejoicing. So I know you know everything about rejoicing. Do you agree? Nice. So, under duress, the brain works in a different way. Under duress, the heart and the mind work differently. So I want to give you that test in the short period of time that we have now under duress. Now, do you remember Jacob, JG, on the train when they said to him, well, what's your name? JG is not a name. Give us a name. What did he say? Just call me Jacob. Jacob. The last is witness, under duress. So, for your activity test this morning, to stir your minds up, have you ready waiting for our teachers? Get your mind racing, on your feet, ready to go. I'm going to give you the letters of the word rejoice. For each letter, I would like you to give me the first scripture that comes to your mind that begins with that letter. So, for example, and I'm going to go really fast, if I show you rejoice, you're going to write or make a note quickly. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. Don't use that one. I gave it to you already. Okay? So, now if you're not finished, parents, please help the children. And if we are not finished, teachers, would you let them do it with their workshop activity this evening? Yes. Very nice. So, are you ready? For each letter of the word rejoice, you are going to give me the first scripture that comes to your mind that begins with that letter. Did you get it? Now we're going to go very fast. Let's go. R. You can write it down or make a little note of it. Let's go. E. Time is almost up. Let's go. First scripture that comes to your mind. J. Somebody have the answers over there? Let's go. O. Oh, taste and see that Yahweh is righteous. Don't use that one. I. Let's go. Let's go. Anybody's getting them? C. Let's go. Let's go. E. Let's go. Very nice. How did you do? Oh! So listen now, if you're not finished, teachers, will you please let us finish off at workshop activity this evening, okay? Praise Yahweh. Now that your brain is racing and you're ready, I will introduce to you our first great speaker. Praise Yahweh.
Shalom, everyone. You may be seated. May the peace of Yahweh be with each and every one of you. So to start off today, I have a demonstration I want to show you. So as you can see here, I have two paper plates. They're exactly the same. They both have flowers on them. They're both white and they're both paper. Okay? I also have 3 pieces of candy and they're all pink. And I'm going to put the 3 pieces of candy here on this plate. Now let's see if I can make this candy disappear. But the important thing in order to make this candy disappear is you have to count to 3, okay? 1, 2, 3. Is the candy gone? Did it disappear? I don't see any candy, do you? Does anyone see candy? Where did it go? So you may think the candy disappeared, but the candy was taped to this side of the plate to try to deceive you. This can be compared to the promises of this world. They are deceptive, and they make false promises that can deceive us. But you know what? Yahweh's promises are real. They're not deceptive, and they do not deceive us. In Moshe's time, Yahweh made promises to Moshe and the children of Israel. And we see this in Exodus chapter 7, verse 8 to 12, when he promised that he would bring them out of Egypt. And it says, Then Yahweh spoke to Moshe and Aaron, saying, When Pharaoh speaks to you, saying, Perform a miracle for me, then you shall say to Aaron, Take your staff and put it down in front of Pharaoh to become a serpent. So Moshe and Aaron went to Pharaoh and did just as Yahweh commanded them. And Aaron threw his staff down in front of Pharaoh and his officials, and it became a serpent. Pharaoh then summoned the wise men and the sorcerers and the magicians of Egypt, and they did the same thing with their secret art. Every magician threw his staff down, and it became a serpent. But Aaron's staff swallowed up their staffs. Just like Yahweh makes promises, the world makes promises too. Their promises look real, just like the magicians in Egypt. Their serpents looked real, their staffs looked real, but the promises of this world are empty and they're deceitful. They do not last, but Yahweh's promises are eternal. They fulfill our needs now and will forever. So we see here that Yahweh has power over all the gods, and Yahweh keeps his promises. Have you ever made a promise to someone? Has someone ever made a promise to you? Maybe you say, I'll meet you here at this time, or I'll bring something for you. Or a parent may promise their young child, if you sit quietly during the services, you'll get a reward later. A teacher may promise a young student, if you complete your work, I'll give you a reward afterwards. Now, when we make promises, we say Yahweh willing, because we do not know the future, and we are not perfect. But when Yahweh makes promises, he says to us, if you seek after his kingdom, and you seek after his righteousness and his house, all of these things would be added to you. It's only if we choose to stop seeking after Yahweh's kingdom and his righteousness that these promises that he has promised us would be taken from us. Like we see in Matthew chapter 6, verse 33, but seek first the kingdom of Yahweh and his righteousness, and all these things would be added to you. Yahweh's promises many things to those who seek after his kingdom and seek after to take after his righteous character. So let's look at a few of them. In Psalms 91, verse 8 to 11, 14 to 15, it says, but only with your eyes you will look and you will see the reward of the wicked. Because you have made Yahweh your refuge, because you have made the Most High your house, the house of Yahweh. No evil will befall you, nor plague come near your dwelling. For he will give his Malachim charge concerning you, to keep and protect you in all your ways. Yahweh says, because you have set your love upon me, I will deliver you. I will cause you to escape. I will set you on high because you know my name. You will call on me and I will answer you. I will be with you in trouble. I will deliver you and honor you. Yahweh says this to those who seek after his kingdom and to seek after his righteous character, that he will protect them. Now, we receive some of Yahweh's promises now of peace and protection because we look at the world and we see the shootings and we see the war and we see sickness and we see disease and famine and we see nations on the verge of nuclear war. But Yahweh has promised us this protection here. And we are receiving that promise at this time. And in 1 Yochanan 2, verse 25, it says, and this is the ultimate promise. This is the promise that he has promised us to eternal life. Now, this is the ultimate promise that he gave mankind. But not only did Yahweh promise us eternal life, in Genesis 1:26, he said, I will make man in my image and according to my likeness, and they will have rulership over the fish of the sea, the birds of the air, over the cattle, and over all the earth and every creeping thing that creeps upon the earth. Yahweh promised us eternal life and that we would have authority over all creation, but we must seek after his kingdom and his righteousness. And in Revelations 22, verse 14, blessed are those who keep his laws, that they will have right to the tree of life and may enter into the gates and into the city. Now, these are just a few of the many promises that Yahweh has promised us. We could go on and on with all of the ones that he has. And we've already started to receive some of Yahweh's promises because Yahweh promised that he would send us a teacher to come and teach us to help us take this confusion away so we can understand. So now we know that fat men in red don't come down chimneys and leave gifts for children, or that Easter bunnies don't lay painted eggs. But we've only learned these things because we've been taught by the greatest teacher in the world, the great Kohen Yisrayl Hawkins at the House of Yahweh. But with us seeing all of the promises that Yahweh has promised us and seeing Yahweh's plan to come to pass, at times we still have tests and trials, and we may get discouraged and we may mess up. But we have to remember that Yahweh brought us here out of all of the people in the world. Yahweh said, I promise you these things, and Yahweh sees our efforts. He sees our desire to seek after his kingdom and his righteousness, and Yahweh will account this to us as righteousness. Yahweh looks at each and every one of you and looks at us as special, and he says, I see something in you, and that's why I chose to bring you here. And at times we don't see it ourselves. We get caught up into the tests and the trials and the things that we are going through. But remember that Yahweh chose you out of all of creation, and he is offering us promises in these last days, his house of Yahweh, that he has offered to no other generation. So while we are striving to continue to seek after Yahweh's kingdom and to seek after taking on his righteous character, let us look at each other as special people, because this is how Yahweh sees us. And never forget the many things that Yahweh has promised to us. And I want to thank the great Kohen Yisrayl Hawkins for giving me the opportunity to speak today and for teaching us Yahweh's laws. And with this, I will turn it over to the next speaker.
Shalom, great saints of Yahweh. May the peace of Yahweh be with each and every one of you. You may be seated. Okay. So the title of my speech today is Mankind's Greatest Commission. In the beginning, when Yahweh created the earth and he placed mankind on it, he gave us one thing to do, to guard and keep his perfect way, to the tree of righteousness. And we can find this in Genesis chapter 2, verse 15, found on page 2. And it says, Then Yahweh took the man and put him in the Garden of Eden to work and care for it. But sadly, Adam disobeyed Yahweh. And from then onwards, from one work to another, only a few people did ever guard and keep Yahweh's way. But the rest of the world fell into darkness and God worship, practicing the teachings of the tree of righteousness and evil. And you can see here in Revelation chapter 12, verse 9, that Satan deceived the whole world. So here we are in the last generations, which started in 1934, and Yahweh still gave us this one instruction, to guard and keep his perfect way. Now let's see mankind's progress. From the year 1934 to 2017, mankind has made many astonishing discoveries and findings. Just to name a few, they patented the computers, they patented nuclear weapons, they made the computers, the TVs, the telephones. Now, never before has mankind ever had the capability to destroy all life on Earth. But now, with the nuclear weapons and just a few clicks, the Earth is capable of being burnt and made waste. Yes, mankind's done it again. They now have the ability to be every and anywhere, being greatly deceived by Hollywood, Bollywood, or should I say Follywood, which is the teachings of the fallen gods. Now, Satan uses the media, the internet, the TV, and all these things to deceive us and to publicly teach sin to the world. And we know that sin is the breaking of Yahweh's laws. And in the Mark of the Beast, volume 2, page 342, deception is defined as when one allows oneself to be drawn into the belief that he or she can have a joyful life by breaking Yahweh's laws. But we know that's not true, for the gods of this world has desensitized the people into deception and lies. Now, the discoveries are out of this world. Scientists and explorers have traveled high and low, far and wide, searching to find and discover life on the moon, Mars, Jupiter, and all the other planets. Billions of dollars are spent so we can know of other civilizations besides our own, while at the same time, the mankind is turning our planet into a bloody death camp. Through depopulation, wars, bombings, fighting, genocide, mass killing, about 151,600 people die every day. That's from Quora.com. That's approximately 56 million deaths annually. Through famine, starvation, drought, sickness, changing their lifestyle, converting the people to practice sodomy, bestiality, and fornication. They destroyed the earth through their so-called natural disasters. They poisoned mankind through their foods, they poisoned them through their drugs and abortions, which is the sorcery of the gods. Now, as we can see once again, mankind did not guard and keep Yahweh's way. They did not guard and keep Yahweh's most valued and precious creation, which is mankind themselves. So let me ask you this. Monarch butterfly, rusty batch bumblebee, wild tiger, polar bear, and leatherback turtles, what do they all have in common? Well, they're all extinct beings, right? Now, from what I've told you here today, do you believe mankind must go on that same list? So an article from BusinessInsider.com, headline, Humans Fit the Government's Criteria for Endangered Species. Now, the Endangered Species Act was passed in 1973 and has 5 criteria. I'm going to cover the top 2. Number 1, there is a present or threatened destruction of the habitat or home. And number 2, very simply put, the population of the species is at risk. Yes, mankind does fit these criteria to a T, but we are still killing our own kind and destroying our only home. Yet we're the most intelligent species on planet Earth. So my question is why? Why are we doing these things? And who's behind this evil plot to rob mankind of their eternal glory and destroy the earth of its original beauty? Now, well, to find this out, we're going to see this answer in the beginning. So let's turn over to Genesis chapter 3, verse 5. Now he says, For he knows that in the day you eat of it, your eyes will be open, and you will be as gods, knowing righteousness and evil. Now we can see here that mankind has been greatly deceived by the gods to practice sin. And through sin, Satan will have the ability to destroy mankind and to destroy our home. After sin has grown the minds of the people, we can see sin in full action. It's the next chapter over, Genesis 4, verse 8. We see that the first Pope Cain, following after the gods, killed his brother, the righteous priest of Yahweh. Now the point here is that the first death that was committed on earth by mankind, the first sin that was committed on earth by mankind was death to a human being. It wasn't to a tiger, it wasn't to an animal, it wasn't to a bee, it wasn't to a plant, but it was to man. So this started the process of extinction of all the other species on earth. Now, to the scientists, environmentalists, those who want to preserve life of endangered species, to reverse this cycle and fix this problem, we must stop killing mankind and start practicing Yahweh's laws. Then our hearts and minds will be returned to righteousness and to peace. Now, there is still hope for us. So Yahweh is still teaching life and peace at his house at Abel. And this promise still does remain for you, those who want to have life. In Genesis 1:26, Yahweh says, I will make man in my image and in my likeness. I will give you authority over all that my hands has made. For the kingdoms in the heavens and the universe will be governed by us, mankind, those who practice Yahweh's laws. So in closing, I want you to remember that we must train to get into Yahweh's kingdom and learn to guard and keep this only way to life. All the kingdoms of the heavens and earth does belong to Yahweh. And if we do Yahweh's work, we will receive this kingdom. And this, I'll turn it over to the next speaker.
Shalom, everyone. You may be seated. May the peace of God be with each and every one of you. Please start by turning over to Revelation 18. Revelation 18 on page 982. In verse 4, it says, And I heard another voice from heaven saying, Come out of her, my people, so that you do not partake in her sins and that you do not receive in her plagues. So there Yahweh is telling us to come out of the world. And then in Matthew 6:33 on page 733, Yeshua says, But seek you first the kingdom of Yahweh and his righteousness, and all these things will be added to you. Yeshua says, seek first, not second, not third, but first. It should be the first thing in our life, and his righteousness. And then in Romans 8:19 on page 879, it says, For the earnest expectation of creation waits for the revealing of the sons of Yahweh. So we have to put all sin and worldliness from our lives and seek first and train for our jobs in this kingdom, because the universe is waiting on us. They're waiting on us so we can teach them. We are their only hope. Sometimes the tests and trials get so bad and the pressure gets so overwhelming, but we have to remember that Yahweh is very anxious to give us these promises. And he says it's our job to endure until the end. But as in the parable of the sower that the Savior gave us in Matthew 13, some won't be grounded here. In Matthew 20 on page 747, verse 16, it says, So the last will be first and the first last. For many are called, but few chosen. Overseer said, Many are called, but many will waste their time on prep day rather than getting ready to meet Yahweh, who's giving this kingdom to them. And they'll let Satan convince them that the grass is greener on the other side and life in the world is better. And they'll end up throwing away their position and their opportunity to receive of Yahweh's great promises. When in reality, the world is in a mess. Men, women, and children are starving, and many are refugees because they go from one war-torn country to another seeking protection. And this is why we have to train for our jobs, because without us, they have no hope. The whole universe is counting on us to endure until the end. We also have to be so thankful and show it to Yahweh every day, because stop and think for a minute. What if you were a refugee and you were starving and you were going from one place to another and you didn't have any shelter and you didn't have any protection and you didn't know when your next meal was, but you're not? Yahweh chose you and he chose me to be a part of his great family and be training for his great kingdom. Never take that for granted. So when the tests and trials get overwhelming and they get hard to bear, remember Yahweh's promises that he gave us in Revelation 21:4. Revelation 21:4 on page 984. And Yahweh will wipe away all tears from their eyes, and there will be no more death, nor sorrow, nor crying, and there will be no more pain, for the former things have passed away. In Romans 8:18 on page 879, Romans 8:18. It says, For I consider that the sufferings of this present time are not to be compared with the glory that will be revealed in us. Yahweh will wipe away all tears and sorrow and pain, for the former things, our tests and trials, the things that we struggle with, have passed away. These promises can be ours. We just have to seek first Yahweh's kingdom and thirst after his righteousness, rather than focusing on the cares of this life. So in closing, I want to remind you what Overseer said a few weeks ago. At the end of his sermon, he said faith and determination. Faith and determination to come out of the world. We can do it. Strive to be the very elect. Show the Yahweh that you're willing to do it. And with that, I'll turn it over to the next speaker.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. You may be seated. So today I'm going to be talking about the things that we have to look forward to in Yahweh's plan, and how prophecy fulfilled is what proves the book of Yahweh true, and that we can put all our trust into Yahweh's plan as taught by the 7th Malach, because Yahweh's words will never fail. Now, we know we're living in the generation of the nuclear bomb, and we know the nuclear war is coming, so what should we do? Like we've been taught, Luke 24:25, Yahshua said, "Oh, fools and slow of heart to believe all the prophets have spoken." We don't want to be fools. We don't want to be the ones who start doubting and start backsliding into God worship like the children of Israel did. There's many examples in the scriptures that were given for our learning. Now, the prophecies that we've been taught, most of them have come to pass already, and the last prophecy for this generation is the darkening of the sun, talked about in many scriptures. Just for one example, Matthew 24:29, where Yahshua said, during this great tribulation, the sun will be dark and the moon will not give her light. And prophecy shows the invention of the nuclear bomb, the ability to darken the sun like Isaiah 24 and burn the earth. And not only does it show the invention in this last generation, but also that it's going to be used. Now, it also gives the specification that it will burn the earth in 1 hour. And we know the top scientists back that up. And in every article at Pastor Wright's almost, we see this article called Atomic Armageddon is just 30 minutes away. And at the end of the article it says, so the world could be basically finished off in anywhere from a half hour to an hour. Like Revelation 18 said 3 times, a half hour to an hour, 1 hour, upon the arrival of these warheads. Most nuclear warheads would be delivered in a very short time, probably within half hour of interval. We know Yahshua said that this time of trouble would be cut short. But today I want to focus on how magnificent this being Yahweh is, because he can foretell the future. In this book, The Mark of the Beast, that we've been encouraged to read many times, we've been going over in the classes, in the beginning, Pastor says, introduction, if the study of prophecy is as fascinating to you as it has always been to me, then you will enjoy this book. And he really harps on how if you really trust in Yahweh's plan, there's no room for doubt, because only he is able to tell the future, not just an hour in advance, but 6,000 years in advance, and inspired different men to write it at different times, and they all come to pass. It says, but there is a being who is capable. He not only has the power to know what will take place tomorrow, he knows what will take place 6,000 years in advance. In each individual's life, he is called out for his service, showing that Yahweh is in full control of our entire lives. This being has foretold what would occur in one individual's life on a certain day at a certain time in that day, and even given details of that event. And he goes on to say, in this book we've tried to simplify each prophecy so even a child could understand. Yet we've tried to make this book so interesting that every education level will find themselves engrossed in the study of the Holy Scriptures. And that's how Yahweh's word should be to us. We should care about nothing else in the world but to come here and to learn every word that is offered to us by every class and by every sermon and the words of Yisrayl Hawkins. And we don't want to be those people who don't believe. Yahshua said, he dealt with this a lot, if you remember. And in Yochanan chapter 6 is just one example, where, remember, he had thousands of people following him, but they all left. They disbelieved, except for his 12. And do you remember what he said? He turned around and said to them, then Yahshua said to the 12, will you also leave? Simon Kepha answered him and said, Teacher, to whom would we go? You have the words of eternal life, the laws and the prophets. And we believe and are sure that you are the Messiah, the Son of the living Father. And you see that he testified to them all the things concerning himself. Those who believed at that time, they have a promise awaiting them. And in these last days, we have the promises awaiting us. we want to be the ones that fully believe in Yahweh's work and in Yahweh's plan, and never doubt, because doubt is the start of God worship. And you can see this in Genesis chapter 3. And this is especially important because for the women in Yahweh's house, because you can see Satan deceived Eve. Remember? It says Adam was not deceived, but the woman being deceived fell into sin. And another place it says, as the serpent subtly deceived Eve, because she decided to listen to Satan instead of the authority that Yahweh had already placed over her, who had taught her Yahweh's laws, or was supposed to be teaching Yahweh's laws. And you can see there, and the serpent said to the woman, "You will not surely die. You're way too important to die, remember? For he knows that in the day you eat of it, your eyes will be open, you'll be as gods, knowing righteousness and evil." So you can see the pattern there. She doubted Yahweh's laws and Yahweh's plan, and she went to sin, that God worship. And we don't want to do that. We want to be as the righteous women who followed Yahweh's laws, and it's spoken of them righteously, and they have the promises awaiting them. Okay, so this God worship, you can see it's very widespread, very deceptive, and it starts by being slack. Remember, a few weeks ago, Pastor said, don't be lax in your job. We want to be established as teachers in Yahweh's house. Don't be lax. Always follow every instruction, listen with the intention to obey. And since we're being reminded all the time, and we know that this is the last generation that began in 1934, the nuclear war, it's coming. In 2 Kepha, it says, what manner of persons ought we to be? Not going out seeking entertainment or visiting, fulfilling our own lust, or out there Santa Clausing this time of the year when the gods are descending. We want to be, and it says, in all holy righteous conduct. Now we know that this is a place where we learn to conduct ourselves properly. This is a place where we learn Yahweh's laws, statutes, and judgments, and how to abide by them and apply them to our own life. We don't want to be those damn fools, as Pastor said, who start growing lax and go and backsliding into the God worship and going out to the world. Only a fool would do something like that, right? Because if you see the prophecies coming to pass, if you were to really believe them, and look ahead to Yahweh's plan, you would know that if you want to die, that's the only reason you go out there. But we in Yahweh's house, we all want to work in unity. It says in Corinthians, prophecies for the believers, not for the unbelievers. And prophecies what builds up Yahweh's house. All of them are coming to pass, and we have to put our trust in them if we want to be those few that Yahshua talked about. He said, many are called, but few are chosen. Few. And Isaiah 24 said, after the earth is burned, only a few men would be left. And Pastor said a few weeks ago, he said, you can be part of the few that come back to the earth and clean it up. Or you can be burned with the people that bring the sinners will destroy the sinners. But we want to be the ones who come back and help clean up the earth. The prophecies that we've, put our trust in that are in these two books and all the other books. But make sure that we are being those righteous saints of Yahweh, encouraging one another, encouraging our sisters, and as mothers or guardians, parents, and teachers, we need to encourage our children to, look forward to these prophecies. I heard of a child this week. The children, they hear things. She asked a woman, she's only not even 3. She said, how do you go out to the world? And the woman said, she had to think of the answer, but she said, when you sin, you go out to the world. When you start partaking of sin, you start partaking of God worship, and you partake of what the world's partaking of. So, a child can understand. Like it says in the Mark of the Beast book, children can understand. The prophecies are there. We just got to apply them. Now, with this, if y'all please stand, I'm going to turn over to the next speaker.
Shalom, everyone. Please be seated. Today, I'm going to talk about the greatest opportunity ever. You see things in society all the time about a great opportunity you can have doing this or that, such as a job or a career, get rich quick, be all you can be in the army. But do any of these so-called opportunities really have anything of benefit to offer? Satan is deceptive. As Revelations 12:9 says, she has deceived the whole world. She tricks people into thinking that sin is desirable, and you won't die if you sin. Just as she has done from the beginning of mankind, as we can see in Genesis chapter 3. But the results of turning from the laws of Yahweh are still the same. Let's take a look at what's going on in the world today. There's sickness, disease, birth defects, murders, robberies, suicides, mass shootings everywhere, war, starvation, homelessness, deadly weather, and natural disasters all over the globe. These are the things that the world is experiencing at a level worse than ever before. This is the only thing the world has to offer. Nothing beneficial, only turmoil, suffering, and ultimately death. But now this is where our wonderful opportunity comes in. We are being shown the way to be free from all of those things. All we have to do is turn to Yahweh by keeping His laws, and we won't have to be part of that mess ever again. In the first book of Israel, chapter 19, verse 47, Pastor says, Yahweh chose you and placed it in your breeding program. He knew much more about you than what you think He did. He knew you before you were ever born. You are very privileged to be called of Yahweh and to be given the opportunity to be a part of this great glory and honor that Yahweh has in His plan. And in the fourth book of Israel, chapter 23, verse 79, he says, Yahweh is choosing those rulers now. This is all about getting you to understand the great opportunity you have to be a ruler, a leader, a representative of the great kingdom of heaven throughout all eternity. There are going to be lesser positions, and there will be salvation for many. The jobs are being issued out now. You are being trained, chosen, and qualified with these laws so that you can take over. Yahweh says you will never go out of this kingdom. You will never lose this office once you are proven for it. It will be yours because you will have proven yourself ahead of time for it. That's wonderful, isn't it? Where else do you have true love shown to you? Where there's no ulterior motive behind it. Like the true love of a parent who thinks only of your safety, protection, your best interest, and who wants to give you everything. The House of Yahweh first and foremost teaches us the way to avoid harm that comes from making wrong choices. Our overseer Yisrayl Hawkins goes to extremes to always see that every person in the House of Yahweh is well taken care of. He even thinks just as much about preparing for those who are not even here yet, but are coming. House of Yahweh even provides free meals now for everyone who comes to the feast, all out of true love, just as a parent would do. Yisrayl Hawkins, through the inspiration of Yeshua Messiah and Yahweh, has established the House of Yahweh, set up a place where we are protected from the dangers of this world because the laws of Yahweh are kept. And along with that comes peace. Now, yes, we must be tested and tried to see if we can be trusted throughout all eternity. But our tests are what help us develop the character of Yahweh. So we must keep in mind that our tests are a blessing. Remember the trials of Job and the apostles, and the many other examples written in the scriptures for our learning. We must continue to study these things daily so we can keep the goal in sight. Time is short and our redemption draws near. Hebrews 10:37 tells us, "For yet a little while, and he who is coming will come and will not delay." Also, we should keep our minds focused on the prophecies to motivate us to continue our conversion in Yahweh's image. Remember the great promises that Yahweh has in store for us in the very near future. In Genesis 49:10, it says, "The scepter will not depart from Yada until he comes to whom tribute belongs, and the obedience of the nations is his." And remember the awesome prophecy in the book of Daniel, chapter 2, about the stone that struck the image, and it was broken into pieces and could be found no more. And of course, we know the House of Yahweh is that stone, and the image is the beastly governmental system, and we're chipping away at it by teaching the laws of Yahweh. And then the stone that struck the image became a great mountain and filled the whole earth. And of course, we can't leave out Daniel 7:27. It says, "Then the kingdoms and governments and the greatness of the kingdoms under the whole heaven will be given to the people of the saints of Yahweh, whose kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and all governments will serve and obey him." So we see here, the world is not going to continue in this way. And Yahweh is going to take back this world to save mankind from their suffering, using his kingdom of priests to guide all of creation. And we are going to be Yahweh's kingdom of priests forever if we tether ourselves to the chosen branch, Yisrayl Hawkins. We must continue doing the work of Yahweh and never leave our place. If you please turn over to Hebrews 10:38 on page 949, it says, "Now the just will live by the faith, but if anyone draws back, my soul will have no pleasure in him." And in the first book of Israel, chapter 16, verse 96, our overseer says, "I cannot help anyone who draws back. Yahweh cannot either. He cannot work with you. But as long as you stay and study and try to overcome, Yahweh will work with you, and so will I. So you see, we have the greatest opportunity of all time. We're living it right now, so don't throw it away. And with that, I'll turn it over to the next speaker.
Shalom, everyone. You may be seated. The title of my speech today is How Bad Do You Want It? And the reason I chose that title is because in Matthew 6:33, Yeshua tells us to seek you first the kingdom of Yahweh and his righteousness, and all of these things will be added to you. So I looked up the word seek, and in Greek 22:12, it means to desire. And in the Building Moral Excellence unit, it talks about our value system and how what we value ultimately determines what we choose. And on page 13, it says, your values are the principles or qualities that you consider to be important or worthwhile. Your value system is the means by which you rank or prioritize the things which are important to you. Like Yeshua said, seek first. How you prioritize your values is the basis by which many of your decisions are made. For example, if you rank education as your most important value, then when faced with the choice to study for an exam or to spend time with your friends, you would choose to study. What we value determines how we spend our time, what we think about, and how much effort we are willing to put into something. Like in the parable of the pearl, where Yeshua compared the kingdom of Yahweh to that pearl that this merchant had found. And because he valued it so much, he was willing to sacrifice whatever necessary in order to obtain it. And Yeshua is telling us that this is what the kingdom of Yahweh must become to us, because it is the very reason that we were created and called here. And as the speakers before said, all of our time and effort and energy and our focus should be towards training for this kingdom, because it is our purpose. In the acceptance unit on page 95, it says, once you have identified your purpose in life, don't stop there. You must also be focused on achieving it. This means being careful of how you spend your time alone, as Peaceful Solution also says the true test of self-control is what you do when no one is looking, or with friends, as well as being aware of what you conform to. Without focus and determination, you can lose sight of the positive things that you want from life. Peaceful Solution also teaches us about the importance of setting goals in order to achieve our purpose. Setting goals helps us to resist that temptation to sin, and it helps us to stay focused on what we are striving for. If we don't set goals to guide and direct our everyday lives, we won't achieve our purpose. The key to success is found in our everyday routine. What are we doing every day to help us to get closer to our goals? How are we spending our time? What are we thinking about? Are we thinking thoughts that are going to push us closer towards our goal, or are we allowing our minds to become distracted by the things of this world? In the Reverence of Yahweh number 4, Overseer said that the only way that we can overcome is by setting our minds in advance. He said we can't just wait until the test arrives and then try to decide what to do, because if we do that, then we're going to base our decision on emotions and we're going to act impulsively. He said that we have to make up our minds ahead of time. When this test occurs, what am I going to do? This is what I'm going to do. And then stick to that decision. And then in another sermon, I saw the quote on Facebook this week. He gave the suggestion to write it on a note card and keep it in your pocket so that you can remember it, look at it throughout the day to help keep it in your mind. Because it's easy to set a goal, and it's easy to say this is what I should do in this situation, but then when the time comes, it's easy to forget that because our minds are clouded with that emotion. And that's where the discipline comes in, that the Apostle Shaul spoke about in 1 Corinthians 9. In 1 Corinthians 9, verse 25 through 27, it says, and everyone who competes conducts himself temperately in all things. Now they compete to obtain a perishable crown, but we for an imperishable crown. Therefore, I do not run like a man running aimlessly. I do not fight like a man who beats the air. No, I discipline my body and bring it into subjection, bringing every thought under control into obedience as Yeshua. And the scriptures tells us to look to Yeshua because he is our example. So how is Yeshua able to do it? How is he able to live a sinless life, yet still have that same carnal mind that we have? It's because he disciplined himself and he kept his mind focused on the goal, and he didn't allow his mind to go to the right or to the left. He demolished those arguments in his head by bringing every thought under control, using the scriptures as his weapon. And he had his mind set in advance so nothing could ever catch him off guard. And this is the example that we too must follow if we want to be able to overcome the carnal mind. Practicing righteousness is not easy, as we all know, otherwise we'd all be perfect by now. And it's not always the desirable thing to do or what we feel like doing at that exact moment, because Yahweh placed the carnal mind within us to see how hard we are willing to resist it. And he told us that the desire to sin is with us, but we must overcome it. We have to force ourselves to practice righteousness in every situation, no matter how we feel at that moment, and no matter what excuses we want to conjure up in our head, because Yahweh's not going to accept an excuse on Judgment Day. And we have to do that over and over and over until one day we no longer have to force it, because it's become a habit and a part of our character and something that we do because we love righteousness and hate evil. And once we get to that point, we've made it, because that's the deciding factor. And then at that point, Yahweh will know that nothing will ever turn us back to sin. And in closing, I would like to read Philippians 4, verses 12 through 14. And it says, "Not as though I have already attained, nor we're already perfect." No, we all still make mistakes, but it's what we do with those mistakes. Are we going to allow those mistakes to cause us to dig a deeper rut for ourselves, or are we going to pick ourselves back up and keep pursuing after the goal? Pick ourselves back up and keep practicing righteousness, that I may take hold of that for which Yeshua has also taken hold of me. Brothers, I do not consider myself as having yet taken hold of it, but one thing I do, forgetting those things which are behind and reaching forward to those things which are ahead. I press on towards the mark of the prize of the high calling of Yeshua and of Yahweh and Yeshua Messiah. And with that, I'll turn it over to the next speaker.
Shabbat Shalom, please be seated. My coffee has kicked in. I did not plan to tell you this story, but about 3 weeks ago, a person walked in and I attempted to help them. And I forgot to put a receipt away. So I went to sit down to put the receipt away. The person started telling me their whole personal life story. It was a man. So mentally, I planned an exit strategy. Like, I've got to get out of here. But I don't know if it's conscious, but that's when I realized what I was doing. I was moving quickly. So the chair that I went to go sit in, it started to move too. And I promise you, I started trying to grab and reach and hold because I'm falling. I negotiated the fall, meaning I laugh about this because I negotiated the fall halfway through, and I thought, you're not going to fall, you're not going to fall, you're going to be fine. Just keep reaching, keep grabbing, it'll be fine. The chair flew in the middle of the reception area. I saw the man run around. I had a long skirt on down to the floor, and I thought, you have to fall properly. You have to fall properly. So I pushed back. My legs stayed flat against the floor. The man, he looked like, but I said, I know you can't touch me. I know you couldn't touch me. You couldn't help me. No one could help me. My coworkers were like, because like when you're the manager, or like they think of you as the boss, like you can't fall. My coworker said, you fell for so long. I promise I fell for 30 minutes. It would not stop. And I got up. I brushed myself off. I laughed because I thought it was so funny. And I went home that night and I came to some conclusions. First, don't fall after the age of 10. Don't fall. It made me really think. If you can turn over to Hebrews 10:25. Let's start in verse 24. It says, by the faith, Moshe, when he became of age, refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter, choosing rather to suffer affliction with the people of Yahweh than to enjoy the pleasures of sin for a season. Now, I thought about this fall in relation to what we're all going through right now. I know you're going through it because I'm going through it. And we have to go through it because it develops in us fortitude, endurance, and this righteous character that we strive after. The word is 2347 in the Greek, and it means persecution, affliction, distress. The word was broken up into two forms. One was an internal form and one was an external form. Used of a narrow place that hems someone in, that causes someone to feel confined, restricted, without options. It carries the challenge of coping with the internal pressure of tribulation, especially when feeling there's no way of escape. The word that correlates with this is 4728 in the Greek, and it means narrow, confined, properly a narrow place, a difficult circumstance, which Yahweh allows, authorized, and hence only produces a temporal sense of confinement. This internal distress, this affliction that Moshe chose to suffer. If you imagine any king's daughters and the rights that they have, they can go, in a worldly sense, anywhere around the world. They have every resource, everything at their beck and call. But the challenge that Yahweh is giving us is, he's saying, choose rather to suffer affliction. Many are called, but few choose rather to suffer affliction. The great deaconess, she said, many are called and few are chosen. I promise you, Pastor, he said it, I counted 4 times last week. There are going to be few left. If you'll turn over to the book of Job, it's chapter 36:21. It says, beware, do not turn to iniquity. Discipline and affliction came upon you to turn you away from evil. And the rejoicing part of this is when you see the hope. If you fall, get back up. Brush yourself off and start again. You fall, you don't have to stay down on the ground. You get back up, and it's through repentance. In this last days, there are some exciting things going on prophetically. We have to believe without seeing. We really have to believe without seeing. The house of Yahweh was established by this work of 2 men, prophesied by the great prophet Isaiah. That's enough right there that we're here in this building. But this building is the sanctuary. We are the body. And I only may be a corn on your toe. It's for a purpose, though. Don't cut me off. Corns protect against friction. There are some exciting things going on. Yahweh willing, the rebuilding of the third temple. There's some fun things that Yahweh has prophesied through his last day's witness, and I pray to be a part of it forever. And with that, I'll turn it over to the next speaker. Sorry.
Shabbat Shalom, everybody. You may be seated. If everyone could turn over to Isaiah 28, 9 and 10, which is on page 546. And verse 9 says, "To whom will he teach knowledge? To whom will he make to understand doctrine?" And we know in these last days that that person is the one sent, the overseer of the House of Yahweh, Kohan Yisrayl HaKohan. He teaches us Yahweh's understanding that Yahweh reveals to him through Yeshua. And he has been revealing so many different prophecies and so many different wonderful events that are going to be taking place before the kingdom comes. And on verse 10, "For precept must be upon precept, precept upon precept, line upon line, here a little and there a little." And the overseer has been fulfilling this scripture ever since he started bringing forth Yahweh's wisdom and knowledge. He gives a little tidbit here and there. He sees our response. He either goes forward or backs up, depending on how we respond to the information he gives us. It is up to us to bring ourselves up to his standards. Not our standards, his standards, because his standards are the standards of Yahweh and Yeshua. Our standards must be brought up to his standards, which is through study of all of the books of Yahweh, the book of Yahweh, the books of Yisrael, all of the House of Yahweh publications, and especially coming here on Sabbath mornings to be refueled with this wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. Now, we know that the increase in knowledge started in 1934. And to give you a quick rundown, if you could show this poster that I have. Okay, several of the speakers this morning spoke about life in the planets. Okay, now Yahweh has told Yeshua it's time. So Yeshua hasn't, this is how I look at it, Yeshua has inspired the microorganisms in these scientists and artists to come up with these pictures that portray what the scientists have been looking at as the overseer brings forth the knowledge. And this is that they have found that there is water inside not only the planets but also the moons of these planets. And these pictures that you see in this poster show the artist's renditions of what the scientists are trying to describe to us, because we can't go into these planets, we can't see what's inside of these planets, but Yahweh has revealed this information to the overseer. It started with the second book of Yisrayl Hawkins, chapter 38, going on to perfection. He actually brought out about how Jupiter is hollow and that there is life inside Jupiter. Now, he brought this out without any kind of knowledge of what Jupiter looked like, any kind of backup of artist renditions, any kind of pictures from telescopes. This was in August 6th, 1994 was when he brought this out. And on the second one, which would be 1094, he goes on to say, and one of the things he says, I wonder about the wars that are going on in heaven at this time. In heaven. Okay, he goes on in several other of his the books of Israel, where is 2004. He states that the finishing work of the seventh messenger. It says that on 1304 He has a perfect example to the universe that if these laws are taught in their galaxy or in their planets, they would have peace. I've told most of you the life forms, as the world will find out sooner or later, maybe not until Yahweh comes, live inside the planets. They are not outside the planets. Okay. The first time that any scientist actually saw pictures of these planets, actual pictures where they could see the planet themselves, was when they started to put the satellites in space. The satellites started going into space in the 1960s. The men went to the moon in 1969. The Hubble telescope was put into orbit in the 1990s. It had to be repaired because Satan did not want that telescope up there. But Yahweh said, no, the telescope needs to show what is in the universe. So they fixed it. And we have seen beautiful images of the nebulas and the planets and the moons and the orbits and the sun. And we've actually seen the earth from space. And this is all part of the increase in knowledge. Now, this increase in knowledge also included the exoplanet exploration, which started in 2013. And this is put on by NASA. And what it is they are actually going out and finding these planets that are like Earth that could possibly have life on the planets. Now, some of the scientists have been studying. They had to be listening to the overseer, because the overseer says there is life in the planets, there is water in the moons, there is life inside the planets, and the Earth is the only planet in our universe that has life on the outside of the planets. And to give you some headlines, this was on October 19th, 2017. This is put out by Scientific News. It says, alien life could exist below the surface of Mars. And the scientists are shocked because what they found is they didn't actually find water, but they found a type of salt in the Martian soil that would allow water to become liquid inside the planet. So it keeps it from freezing. The heat inside the planet, the core of the planet is very, very hot. The outside of the planet is frozen. So the core of the planet actually heats the water inside. And this is where they are saying the water is found. Now, the overseer says that what he's saying is that when they're looking for this life inside the planets, they're looking for water. And in this water, they're looking for bacteria, the microorganisms. Bacteria will create the life that's inside the planets. Now, a couple weeks ago, he reiterated about the plan of planet Earth. And he spoke about Deuteronomy 30:19, which is on page 173. And it says, I call heaven and earth as witnesses against you this day, that I set before you life and death, blessings and curses. And he re-emphasized heaven and earth as witnesses. And what he said was, he said that we are on the outside of planet Earth. We have the job of guarding the earth. We set up to guard life. And if I could have my second poster, please. Yahweh has given the earth a protective firmament. And with the International Space Station, we can actually see the firmament that is around the earth. And as soon as we get the posters, the pictures shown, if you look at the bottom three pictures, you will see the earth. And then you'll see a thin line either above the earth or beside the earth. The center picture is this picture of the new moon, and you see the atmosphere of the earth. That is the firmament that Yahweh has created for the earth. On the top pictures, there's 3 pictures. The center picture is a magnetic shield. The magnetic shield is created inside the earth. The core of the earth creates a magnetic shield which protects. That is the outer layer of the protective firmament. It protects the earth from the sun's coronal mass ejections, which is these huge bursts of energy that come to the planet Earth. The magnetic shield deflects the majority of this energy, protecting the earth. There is some of the energy does enter into the earth, which is needed at the north and the south poles. If you see the 2 pictures of the earth with all of the beautiful colors, they look like a rainbow sash, that is the microorganisms doing their job, protecting the earth, protecting life from the excess radiation that comes from the energy from the sun that is needed for the earth. The microorganisms are doing their jobs, and every time you see the aurora borealis or the northern and southern lights, you can see Yahweh's protective microorganisms doing their jobs. Now we are to continue being guided by the overseer, because he is going to teach us how we can become those guards of the microorganisms and prove ourselves worthy through study and obedience, that the microorganisms will trust us to guide them, guard them, and protect them as we go into the universe. And with that, I turn it over to the next speaker.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. You may be seated. May the peace of Yahweh be with each and every one of you. The title of this speech is "The Tide Has Turned in These Last Days." And if you take a look at the thing that's up on the screen now, you'll see the sundown time of the last 3 Sabbaths. And you'll see that they end in 34, then they go down to 33, and back up to 34. And you'll notice that that is the overseer's date of conception and the date of birth. But where it starts turning back up started on 12:9, and I want to talk about Revelation 12:9, where Satan has deceived this whole world, but the tide has turned, and the numbers in the sundown time show this. It has turned. So 129 from the Hebrew comes from 127, and it means earthy. Do we all remember when the overseer came up and he spoke about what the Pope's name meant? It meant earthy. Well, this is part of that deception. It also means sin disrupted the harmony between man and the ground. It increased human rebellion, caused decrease in the fruitfulness to the ground. And in the Greek, 129 means blood, bloodshed by violence. And it even gave a scripture in Revelation 17, verse 6, which says and shows where this violence is coming from. "And I saw the woman drunk with the blood of the saints and with the blood of the martyrs of Yeshua. And when I saw her, I wondered with great astonishment." We know this is nothing less than the great whore of Revelation, the Catholic Church, that divining serpent, who is that agency which Satan hides behind. But now, let's see how the tide is turning and how the numbers prove that. In Hebrews 5:33, the conception of the overseer, it means strong, strength, mighty, courageous. It means to be alert, to be strong, to be established, steadfastly minded, and to prevail. Now we know the overseer's name, Yisrayl, means he who rules is Yahweh. When you go to the next word from that, number 8280, it means to prevail, to have power. And the power that the overseer has and gives us is the power that comes from keeping the law and believing in the prophecies, as Malachi 4 says. In the Greek, 533 means to deny utterly, to affirm that one has no connection with a person. It means to abnegate, forsake, renounce, abjure. Now there's going to be on the screen some words, and I want you to look at that and I want you to write them down. From young to old, these are words that we don't normally use very much, but they have a great meaning, and you can take this home and then do your study and find out what this means and put it down for your own reference. But it means to allow the flow of Spirit Holy acting in and through the believer. To abrogate means to refuse, deny, or to renounce. To renounce means formally declare one's abandonment of a claim, to refuse to recognize or to abide by any longer, to declare that one will no longer engage or support. Now, isn't this what the overseer is doing when he told us that, just as Hosea 2:17, we will no longer say the names of the gods anymore. We will put them out of our minds, we will put them out of our eyesight, we will put them out of our mouth. So he is declaring that he is going to abandon what the Catholic Church, the Roman system, has set up in their calendars, because we serve Yahweh and we glorify Yahweh. And the overseer did this, and it shows in the words that he did this. He's saying we aren't part of that system any longer. Now the Hebrew 534 means a summit, a tree, a mountain, or a branch. Isaiah 2:2, Micaiah 4:1, the branch that is beholded by our great high priest Yeshua Messiah in Zechariah chapter 6. It means also that he will speak, he will answer, he will command, tell, declare, plainly publish. He will appoint, assign. And it says here something very interesting. It says, the Bible recognizes that behind the Yahweh-inspired speaking is Yahweh-inspired authority and power. And we know that comes through our great overseer in these last days. And it also shows that this word means from this point forward, without end. Praise Yahweh, because it's forever, without end. And it denotes a separation, a departure, cessation, completion, and reversal. The time on this sundown time showed that this is the reversal, that the tide has turned in this last generation with the conception and birth of the last days anointed witness. And it has, and here it goes from word number 142, which means just now, just now. And it's a verb to lift, to raise up, to keep in suspense, and to expiate sin, which means to get rid of sin. And it talks about a scripture, Yachanan 15:2, and that's where it talks about every branch that Yahweh raises up. He raises up that branch so he may be fruitful. And if you just turn those numbers around in Yachanan 15, verse 2, and do 5:1-2, we all know that Yahweh's in full control, and that we're so glad that he's in full control using the last days anointed one in these last days. So right there we prove that the numbers support that the overseer in these last days has turned the tide of bringing light to this world, making an end to sin, bringing in everlasting righteousness. Now, I want to tell you who I saw at Sam's the other day. We did. We do some shopping for the House of Yahweh. We walked into Sam's. It's a department store, a big warehouse department store. And we couldn't believe our eyes who we saw standing there or being there. And so I know one saw us and recognized us, but I wasn't sure if the other one was. So I thought, I'll call that person and I'll ask if they know that we know they're here. So I called and I'm like, Pastor, we see you at Sam's. And he's like, what? I was like, yeah, we see you. He's like, what are you talking about? May I have my slide, and that will show you what I'm talking about. The slide, please. There. That's the Horsehead Nebula. And it was so amazing that they have about 6 TVs set up at Sam's. I mean, not little huge TVs set up. The first one, when you walk in there, they have demos playing on each one of these TVs. Each TV has a different demo. So this one, as soon as we walked in, the part that was being played was the Horsehead Nebula. And I was like, wow, that was like so amazing. It gave you so much comfort knowing that, we know that Yahweh is with us when we do our assigned job and we have to go out in the world and we're protected. And it's a very great comforting thing. Well, then just this past week, we went into Sam's again. And just as we walked in, that same part was playing, and the nebula was there again. And I was like, wow, that is like so amazing that just that part would be playing when we walked in. So I thought, Yahweh, what are you trying to... Yes. Yahweh is just so amazing. And so I thought, well, what is it about this that I need to know? I mean, it's not... Yahweh must be showing me something. So what I did is I put Horsehead Nebula in the gematria. And it came up with the 3 numbers. Let me see if I can find it here. 3 numbers, 519, 828, and 138. Oh, and I also want to let you know there is another name for the Horsehead Nebula. And now I know you're all sitting, so praise Yahweh for that. I'm going to tell you the scientific or astronomical name that they give it. And it's Barnard 33, or they call it B33. Now, isn't that interesting that that would have the number of the conception of the overseer? I was like, only Yahweh can do those things. He didn't go there. We didn't go there and say, hey, name this here after the conception of the overseer. But Yahweh had that planned and he did it. So, it's all about the overseer. It's all about Yeshua and him bringing forth his kingdom in these last days. So, and also Hubble, in their 23rd year of using the Hubble telescope, they focused on the Horsehead Nebula as their primary celebration for their 23rd anniversary. And you know that 23rd means gathering. I'm running out of time, so I'm just going to let you know. There's a reason that the overseer and Yeshua had to be on the nose of the Horsehead Nebula. But I don't have time to tell you why and how. But Yahweh will in another time. I just have one more scripture. Can I just put that there? If you just look at this and write it down, I encourage you to read it because you don't want your water to ever be dried up. And this scripture in the 16th book of Israel explains what we cannot allow to occur with ourselves so that our water never gets dried up. May Yahweh bless your understanding.
Shalom. You may be seated. I wanted to start out today with a little story, and I might have told it before, but when you get to a certain age, you can tell them all you want. But this is about a general that was taking his men to battle. And they had a long, long, hard journey. I mean, it was treacherous. And he said, they're going to start out and they're going to see how difficult it is and they're going to go home. So what he did is every time they crossed a bridge, he burned it. They couldn't go back. All they could do was focus forward. Well, pastor's kind of like that general. Yes, he's taking us to battle. He has taken us to battle for years with Lucifer, telling us how to battle her, what to do, how to get past her running our lives. In the 4th book of Israel, in chapter 17, verse 37, he says, "Remember, she influences the mind the same as Yahweh, only Yahweh's spirit is stronger. Satan actually has rulership over the human mind until Yahweh's Spirit Holy enters it. It is only by his Spirit Holy that we can get Satan's will out of us. So see, it's with Yahweh that we can battle Satan. Well, the only way that we can do this is to change our patterns, change our thoughts. The Peaceful Solution Character Education books tells us in unit, self-control unit, page 11, everything starts with a thought, our thoughts. Proverbs 27:7 says, as we think, we are, right? Whatever we think we are, that's what we are. If you go around all the time saying, I'm dumb, you'll be dumb. I'm smart, you'll get smart. Well, how do we burn our bridges? What are our bridges? Our bridges, sisters, are when we fall back into the past. We didn't burn that bridge. That bridge is still there. It's our past. It's the program that's been put in us. Maybe you were out in the world and from the womb to 7, pastor says that the pattern is put in us, right? So if we came out of that world, we have patterns that are put in us that we don't even know we have. So let me give you an example. I'll tell you a story about this woman. She was going through something very emotional, nothing really to do with her except it was people she loved. She didn't know how to deal with it. She just kept living it over and over, what she expected to occur. Have you ever done that? Okay, and so it's the same as going through it. Well, finally she ended up sick. One day her heart's pounding, she can't breathe, she's sick. She can't think, this goes on for a while. And then she heard a sermon. And the Kahan said something, and it just clicked. And she got to thinking about it. You know, she said, last time, she didn't get sick very often, so she knew the last time she got real sick, something was going on. She had no control, and it was an emotional situation. And as she looked back, all her life, when something came up she couldn't handle, she got sick. It was easier to be sick than deal with the emotions. Now, she saw the pattern, so she could change it. Well, remember, we beg Yahweh, show us, tell us, what can we do to change? Well, be prepared, because sometimes it can be a very hard thing. But what he's trying to show us is that we have to rely on him. So it says in Isaiah 43:18, Yahweh says, do not remember the former things. These past memories that cause us to go back. The reason we can't be well, we're sick, because we keep going back. Well, you know, Yahweh forgives us, right? We sin, we confessed, we repented, we confessed. He forgave and blotted out. That's what it says. It says in Acts 3:19, repent therefore, be converted, that your sins may be blotted out. Well, here's what occurs. Somebody says something and it snaps you back. And there you are in that sin. And you get to thinking, man, how could I even be here? I'm so bad. You know, I can't believe I did that. How could I ever be forgiven? Well, who are we calling a liar? Didn't Yahweh say he forgave us and blotted it out? It's us, sisters. We can't forgive. We don't forgive ourselves. We don't love ourselves when we don't forgive ourselves. If I can't forgive me, how can I forgive you? Right? I can't love you if I don't forgive you. So it's us that keeps going back, and bringing that sin back, feeling that guilt. It's just like you're reliving it, and so you end up sick. You end up stressed out. You end up not functioning well because you can't do that to your body continuously, because our body is ruled by our thoughts. Our mind, our emotions is after the thoughts. So everything that we think is what we are. That's what we are. And if you are expecting somebody to hurt you and you keep anticipating it and living it, well, you're putting your whole being through that. And you're not putting your faith in Yahweh. That's what the woman realized. Well, I'm not relying on Yahweh. I'm relying on my thoughts. And that most of the time, have you ever realized what you thought would occur didn't? And what if it does? Yahweh says he will give us comfort, right? He said he'll get us through anything. So do we trust him? Do we believe him? In Yochanan Mark 9, it talks about where Yeshua cast the demon out of the boy, and the apostles couldn't do it. But in the side note is what I really noticed was in G1, Yahweh is ever ready to help us. Do we believe that? Isn't he ready to help us? Yes. And then in the side note G2, he says, all things that are agreeable to the will of Yahweh shall be granted to him that believes. Isn't that health? Isn't that everything? Our peace of mind? Yahweh made us to be well. He made our bodies to regenerate. How can we keep being sick if we don't believe that Yahweh will heal us? And I don't mean just, hocus pocus, but I believe and I'm well. No, we're told you have to obey, keep the laws, and do what you're asked to do. Do the best you can. And He will heal us. He will. He promised us. So we either believe that promise or we don't believe it, right? So in Yachanan Mark, it says, in 12:31, it says, you shall love your neighbor as you love yourself. Well, you shall forgive your neighbor as you forgive yourself. Pastor tells us how to do this. He's been telling us for years. Remember when he wrote that song, Yahweh, we love your great commandments? I'm not going to sing it. If you don't know why, ask the cafeteria. But he gave us that song and he said, now when you have a bad thought, this is to replace it. Just start singing this song. And I had forgotten that. And I thought about it this week. And I thought, okay, I'll do that. That's why. But it works because all you got to do is stop that train of thought. Just stop it. Put something else there because they've proven scientifically you can change your inner being, your inner thinking with habit. Because it's a habit. Our subconscious mind rules us with habit. So if this woman had a habit of getting sick all her life, that's what she did, right? So break the habit. Like, if you study, go to the classes, everything pastors told us, when that bad habit comes up, I think I'll stay home and watch TV. Get up and go to class, or pick up your book and burn the TV, Whatever you have to do, whatever your problem is, get rid of it. Just get rid of it. And back to believe only. We know in Jacob 2:14 it says, without works, faith is dead. So if we're given, somebody tells us something that might help us, and maybe some people can afford it, some can't, but if you just do the best you can, you will be healed. Yahweh promised us that. He didn't say, if you're rich and you can get everything, you're going to be healed. No. He said you would be healed no matter what, if you believe and obey. In the book of Yahweh 4, here's what Pastor tells us to expect. He says, gather yourselves together in verse 70. Draw near together, you who have escaped from the nations. That's going to be us, sisters. We're going to escape. And then down here it says about the people that we're going to resurrect. They are going to be so excited to meet us. Can you imagine that? That Sarah and all these women they're going to be excited to meet us because they're going to be astounded at what we came through and we made it. And we're only going to do that by faith. Now, someone asked me this morning because I hadn't been feeling well for a couple of weeks, and they said, you're feeling better, aren't you? And I said, yes, I am. I've been intermittent fasting and doing this and that, and I'm feeling better. But then after I walked away, I thought, no, that's not why I'm feeling better. I'm feeling better because I gave up those thoughts, and I put myself in Yahweh's hands and trusted in Him, and I feel better. So with that, I'll turn it over to the next speaker, and Yahweh bless you.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. You may be seated. And may the peace of Yahweh be with each and every one of you, and may the understanding also be there. Well, for all those who missed out on class, last month I got the opportunity to go into our class for unveiling Satan. It's a hot topic. But to my surprise, something else was revealed to me that day, that month, last month. Can I please have this? That was revealed to me. That's me. I found out that I'm quite rebellious. When you sit down in class, when you sit on the Sabbath day, you always go through this moment. Oh my word, Pastor, he knows it. He's talking about me? How did he know? Who told on me? Right? I was sitting in that class like, oh my word, this Kohana knew about my business. She knew I did that. And she said I was rebellious. Well, she read this paragraph in the Unveiling Satan on page 80. Please write these notes down so you can see for yourself too. As she was reading this, she really hit home with me. And I'm going to go ahead and read it with you. Unveiling Satan, Her True Identity, page 80. It says, at this point, Lucifer began seeking a way to fulfill her lustful desire. Our great Kohana talked about that today. For that one moment, right? For that slight moment, you wanted to fulfill your lust. And she, Satan, right? Put yourself in that situation. Satan turned. Now, you know in Genesis chapter 10, verses 10, and also a second witness to that is 1 Chronicles 1, verses 10, where it gives the genealogy. It talks about how that turning, that Nimrod system, opposing, that's what she did. She turned, she opposed against Yahweh, her father and husband, and his laws. She no longer, and I underlined this part because this really goes along with what Pastor said, the very first thing he said when he got on stage last week. She no longer wanted to teach Yahweh's laws to others. Remember what Pastor said last week? Don't forget what you're here for. You're here to be trained, to be a teacher. Now, it doesn't mean you have to be up here. But through your examples, when you live the laws, you teach the laws. You perform it. Everyone's watching. But she didn't want to do that any longer. Instead, she wanted to create her own set of laws, her own traditions. The Talmud. So confusing, right? But all of these things that she created, these laws, these thousands of laws that Daniel prophesied, they were contrary to Yahweh's laws. Remember in Deuteronomy chapter 12, don't come here and start doing what is right in your eyes, doing your own laws. You're here for Yahweh's simple 613 laws. That's it. Okay? And bring, okay? So this is contrary to Yahweh's laws. And she, remember what she did? And then she teach them to others. So she created her own laws and she let it spread. She let it spread. Revelation speaks a lot about that. The Babylonian system. This harlot that everyone is committing fornication with. Being part of her system, her laws. Now this seems kind of extreme, like, oh, I don't do that. You know, I don't create all of these laws. I don't have all the nations coming and trying to follow me. But yet, let's read the next part, okay? The title she instituted for herself was God. All of this that we spoke about, these characters, all these actions that she took, made her into a god. She set out to be the supreme God. And she succeeded. Because Yahweh allowed it. That is, she succeeded in becoming the gods of the angel, Malachims who fell and followed her in her rebellion. And the gods of this world. Go back to the word rebellion, her rebellion. Really write that word down. Because that's where it really hit me. Her rebellion. That's ultimately where we make ourselves into a god. That's where we can't say we do God worship, but we have made ourselves into a god. Everyone knows Genesis 3 verse 5. It talks about that. But I want you to understand about this rebellion. Because it sneaks up. It sneaks up very easily. And this is where we fall into that trap of being like Satan. Where we refuse and we start doing things that's right in our eyes. Because we are so right. Right? We are so right. We were in that situation. We knew what occurred. We were so right. But Yahweh is not looking for whether you're right. He's looking back to Are you making your own laws? Are you making your own opinions? Or are you going to stay firm and keep my 613 laws by being obedient? Here are 3 examples of how we fall into rebellion. And with each of these examples, I'm going to give you a short story about my own life. And that's when I realized that I truly had a long road with this rebellion of mine. The first one is embarrassment. That can cause you to be really rebellious. And of course, I got this experience when I was a child. Me and my cousin, my cousin and I, we were playing with all sorts of toys, and something occurred, and I remember throwing that toy across the living room, and it hit them right in the head. And that was it. I mean, the fight was over. It's like, oh my word, my cousin got hit, and he's crying, and it was me. And oh my word, I was so embarrassed because everyone saw it. And when they asked me to go and say sorry, I was like, no, I'm not saying sorry. I didn't do it. Everybody saw it. I'm too embarrassed. I'm like, no, I didn't do it. You see children, right? A lot of times it's not really like they're purposely mad, but they're just so embarrassed and so scared that, yes, it's rebellion. It is. It is a form of rebellion. It is, because the right thing to do is to go and apologize, right? So our second thing is pride. This one's very, very, very easy to fall into. And that brings me into my teenage years. Pride. My mom and I are very close. And one night, she let me know. I mean, this is like 2 o'clock of a night, 2 a.m. That's how close my mom and I are. We'll stay up all night and talk. So 2 a.m. she tells me, you're a great kid, but there's one thing about you that I think you need to work on. And I'm like, what? I mean, I'm very obedient, Mom. We have a great relationship. I do anything you want me to do. I'm very dependable. She's like, yes, but you're prideful. I mean, what do you mean? My mom's really real to me. Well, whenever you do something wrong, you never say, I'm sorry. But Mom, like the other day when you told me to go get that stuff, I know I forgot, but I did go and get it, but you never said you were sorry. So I started looking to, every day, and every time I forgot something, every time I did something wrong, I would just hurry up and cover it up and quickly do it right. But I made the mistake of putting my mom in a very bad situation, and I couldn't say, I'm sorry. And I'm like, oh. Because I never admitted I was wrong. I couldn't admit that I was wrong. I made it right. I made it right later on, like a day after, But that's rebellion. That's rebellion, okay? The third one is stubbornness. This one is my adulthood. I thought I was nice. Then I realized I was stubborn. The thing about stubbornness is when you're right and it's not your fault. You're not willing to give in. You're like a donkey. You're really that donkey this time. Okay? And there were situations that, we all go through, I went through, where I knew I was not wrong. I knew it. I did everything I could to do it right the first time. I really did. And even the second time after you told me to do it the first time, I did the second time the right way. It's that stubbornness. And then you go and you do something, and then you're told you did it wrong. You need to go and apologize, blah, 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 blah. And that's all you hear in your mind, blah, 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 blah. And for days and days you carry it on because you're not willing to go and apologize because you know you didn't do it. You know you didn't do it. Why do I have to apologize for something I did not do? Well, you don't know. But in that situation, that's what's great about the House of Yahweh. You always have parents.
You're always a child. You always have parents. And they know what you need to do. They know you're innocent, but they know the other person just needs that little comfort to just kind of help them go along. And sometimes you gotta give that extra sucker, or sometimes you gotta lend that $10, to help them out, right? You're like, but mommy, I saved that money for my allowance, But whatever it is that we have to sacrifice, we know we're not being stubborn. We know we're being humble. We know we're being obedient. We know that we want to see our sister strive with us, the rest of our family strive with us. And then, in the end, and remember about that scripture that talks about the revealing of the saints. Don't let it be revealed to you that you were rebellious. Let it be revealed to you about your obedience. And I have a long list. I didn't read this list to you of why you were obedient. There were situations you went through. You missed dinner that day, and you stuck with the work. And you're so hungry. When I miss dinner, I am cranky, people. But if I had to stick with the work, I'm going to stick with the work. Your car broke down. You slam your finger in the door. You have a very talkative coworker. The coffee spilled all over your keyboard and now you can't type anymore. Or sometimes, I remember one time I was using a computer and this person types really, really well that she don't even need the keyboard to be the letters on it. It was completely worn out. And I'm like, A is here. I can't even know what the letters were. Things like that, right? To make your life so wonderful. Or sometimes it could be that you traveled so long to get here. You traveled 30 minutes to get here, got all your children in the car, come to find out class was canceled. Nobody told you that. Somebody forgot to update their phone call list, right? You got a new number, you forgot to give it to them. So things that we go through here in the house, but when we put the effort in to not be rebellious, to not be like Satan, to not go in our own way, to just buckle down and be righteous and prove that, we'll prove to Yahweh that we are fit to be part of this team of righteous saints that's going to bring peace to all the universe, a lasting peace. If you all please stand, I'd like to reveal to you our next teacher.
Shalom, everyone. You may be seated. May the peace of Yahweh be with each and every one with you. I would like to start today by telling you a conversation I had with someone. Okay? Someone once told me about this banquet that they were invited to, right? They were amazed at its beauty. It was something they have never, ever seen in their lives before. It was huge. The banquet hall was huge. And when they walked through the gates or the doors, the walls were clear as glass. For decorations were precious stones and pearls, brilliant light. No expense was spared. Transportation was provided. When they looked around, they were surrounded by every single family member. No one worthy was left out. Being a woman, you would think, do I have clothing and shoes to go to this banquet? You know what I mean, right, sisters? That's the first thing we run through our minds. I was told no worries, it was provided. The finest garments were available, was provided because you have proven yourself loyal true, and held fast. You qualified. Can you see it? Can you see it? Let me hang this here quickly. So this is the banquet they were invited to. There was a table provided for the food. Huge, long tables. Anything your heart desire was upon it. You could just smell it, right? Because we are all foodies. Mouth-watering. The finest china was used. Can anyone guess this banquet or feast that they were invited to? Yes, the marriage supper. You got it. I know you all read, right? Yes, it was the marriage supper they were invited to. In 1994, Overseer had a vision about this marriage supper. Reading from the second book of Israel, chapter 13, the going unto perfection. Found on page 273. It's a bit long, so sisters, please bear with me. I went back to sleep. I had another dream. Overseer refers to it as a dream, but in my heart, I honestly believe it was a vision from Yahweh, so we'll go with vision, okay? Right at that one, I could have never imagined any such thing as I saw in that dream. I have never seen it in the paintings, read about it in books, seen it in the movies or anything. I was in Yahweh Shema. And I was at the wedding supper. I could hear everyone talking. There were a number of people. I could hear their individual voices speaking to me. I never missed a thing. The house of Yahweh was seated at Yeshua's right hand. There was a long, long table. I had my left hand to Yeshua, and I was facing the table, which had every kind of food you can think of. I could see every individual. I had eyes in all directions. The far end of the table looked like it was miles away. So picture that table, right? Long table, miles away. But you could see it clearly. You could see everything because of the light particles that were coming to the eyes that Yahweh gave us, although these things were miles away. So he had perfect vision. I asked, "Who is that?" at the far end of the table, and a voice said, "You know." And I said, "That's Abel, isn't it?" I was rejoicing. In front, across the table, there were many multitudes as the sands of the seas. I didn't know if it was the top story or what, but you could see the earth, and we could see all the planets individually. There was one huge planet that was passing by us at this time, and it looked like you could reach out and touch it. I praise Yahweh for it. So this was the vision Overseer had. Wasn't that an awesome vision to receive, sisters? I personally definitely want to be there. Sisters, this is a vision, as I said before, is of a prophecy that will soon come to pass. This prophecy is a promise Yahweh has made to us through his anointed ones. It will be our reward, yours and mine, to see this come to pass. Prophecy is only for the believers, those who believe in the plan of Yahweh. For your notes, you can read about this prophecy in Revelation chapter 19. I urge you all to read it and remind yourselves about these things daily. Sisters, each and every one of you called in these last days are invited to this marriage supper. We are invited, right? Yes, we are. But there is a but. It is contingent upon us. Us qualifying, us getting rid of God worship, us holding true and dear to the house of Yahweh. That is the only how we're going to qualify for this marriage supper. Every single person from since the beginning of Genesis who has been called by Yahweh have this exact same opportunity to live by every single word of Yahweh. Those who overcome and obey every word that proceeds from Yahweh's mouth will enter into the marriage supper of the Lamb. But those who do not convert to Yahweh's way will be cast out into the lake of fire, the second death to be never remembered again. Matthew 22 verse 14 states, many are called, but few are chosen. Yes, many are called, but few are chosen, sisters. Matthew chapter 13 plainly states, 3 sisters, 3 out of 4 will fall away. So these things are not new. It was prophesied in advance. 3 out of 4. Do you want to be one of those statistics? 1 out of the 3? Or the one that remained? Which one? This is why us being invited to this marriage supper solely depends on us. Our works, it depends on us, sisters. Any form of God worship will revoke our admission. We will not be invited and welcomed at it. Any form of God worship. So, sisters, if we want to be a part of this prophecy, we must overcome every single thing that is not according to Yahweh's law. So now, let's talk about it. The big elephant in the room, social media. Yes, the work of Yahweh used social media to get it out, to get the message out, because that is our job. But it's a slippery slope to go down. Right? And easy as that, we can fall down that slope. So when we, the called out ones, the members sitting here today in the house of Yahweh, follow, chat, tweet, like posts with people who have left this great establishment and tear down this establishment, what are we doing? I know we heard it 1,000 times, but we must consider these things. What are we doing? What examples are we setting for our children? We must consider this. It is very simple, sisters. Flee from all forms of God worship. Read with me to 2 Corinthians chapter 6, verses 14 to 18. In the book of Yahweh, found on page 904. I want you to notice Yeshua's words he used. He used strict opposite words. One end of the spectrum to the other end of the spectrum. Notice these words. 14. Do not be unequally yoked with unbelievers. For what fellowship has righteousness with unrighteousness? And what fellowship does light have with darkness? What harmony can there be with Messiah and Baal? Worthlessness. Satan, or what does a believer have with an infidel? Untrustworthy. These are what they are. They are untrustworthy, not faithful, not true or loyal. What agreement does the house of Yahweh have with the gods? None at all. For we are the house of the living Father, not the house of the gods. As Yahweh has said, I will dwell in them and walk among them. He cannot walk in God worship nor filth. I will be their father, and they will be my people. Therefore, come out from among them and be separate. Says Yahweh, do not touch the unclean thing, and I will receive you. Therefore, verse 18, I will be a father to you, and you will be my sons and daughters, says Yahweh Almighty. Sisters, the choice is yours. I cannot explain it any plainer. The choice is yours. Salvation is something personal. You have to want it within yourself, your very being. You have to earn for it, breathe for it. Your heart have to beat for it. Nobody's going to give you a get out of jail card free, or nobody's going to give you salvation on a golden platter. No. You have to earn it with your works and your deeds. So, sisters, if we want to be a part of this marriage supper, we have to work for it. Yes, we're invited, but it is contingent upon us. Before I finish, I had one more last thing to share with you. Okay. Having a supervisor as overseer, his attention span, because he's so busy, he has so much things going on. His attention span, because you have to ask questions, right? His attention span, you have to get a way to get that attention. So I came up with a strategy. What is the best thing overseer want to speak about? The laws, the scriptures. So I said, okay, let me beat the system. I'm going to speak scriptures and get his attention. Then I'm going to ask my questions. So this is me. It works, I kid you not. Overseer, do you know how long you've been in Abelin? He said, I came in 1967. I'm like, okay. Him, 50 years. I'm like, okay, since you like numbers so much and I cannot count to 10, have you ever looked up the number 50 in the gematria? Gematria. I'm still working on that word, okay? I cannot count to 10, remember? So now I used my faithful phone and I typed in number 50, right, in the gematria. I urge everyone to try it. I typed in the number 50, and to my amazement, this is what came up. It came up in the Jewish gematria, it came up number 50. In the English, it came up number 204, and in the simple, 34. But notice this highlight up here. Anybody know what's that? Huh? We unsure. Come on, peoples. What is that? The Tetragrammaton. To revisit it, it's found at the front of the book of Yahweh before Genesis. It'll give you all the details about Yod-Heh-Wah-Heh, the original writings of the name Yahweh. So that is what number 50 means. Right? I was astonished because numbers is not my thing. I run from numbers. I appreciate every single hour and minute people put into it, but I run from it. So when I looked up number 50, it says, number 50 in Jewish, it says it comes from number 1 and number 771. And in the Greek, and it means father of plenty. And it refers to number 1. And number 1 means father. So there you have number 50 means Yahweh. In the English is number 204. 204 in the Strong's Hebrew Concordance means cornerstone. Who is the cornerstone? Yes, Ephesians 2:20, Yeshua is the cornerstone. So there we have it. We have Yahweh, we have Yeshua. So number 34. What could ever number 34 mean? Yes, overseer's birthday, date of birth. He was born in 1934. But if you look up that word, also it means heard. It means to bring forth. Sisters, I know time is short. I know we have a lot on our plates, but we can do it. We can qualify for this marriage supper. We can do it. There's no need for us to be disqualified. We have everything at our fingers, right? So are we going to try and work it out? Yes, we are. And we will succeed. Praise Yahweh. Yahweh bless.
Shabbat Shalom again. You may be seated. Okay, so I have a recipe with me because I know we've done cookbooks all the time during the feast. Women's cookbooks, men cookbooks. So I have some ingredients with me in my basket. I'm going to show them to you. Shalom again. I'm going to show them to you, and I want you to tell me what I'm going to prepare. What meal am I preparing? Are you ready? Olive oil? Not pizza. Salt? Flour? Not muffins. And my last ingredient, frankincense. What am I preparing? What meal is this? What food preparation is this? Okay, I'll give you another clue. I can only use the frankincense sometimes. Sometimes frankincense. But for every one of those meals I must use this. What am I preparing? I heard it. Sacrifice. So, my topic today is making ourselves living sacrifices, which is our reasonable service. Did you know that law number 39 to law number 91 talks about sacrifices? Those who do math well, how many laws would that be? Math. Great job. Nice. Let's go on. Now, you could use a lamb, you could use rams, you could use the bull, you could use turtle doves. Sacrifices. Why so many laws about sacrifices? So many laws. And then at the end of it, Yeshua told us he's going to send us that perfect sacrifice. Who's the perfect sacrifice? We'll get to that. So, I said, okay, let's look at with me Romans. Romans says, therefore, brethren, brothers, by the mercies of Yahweh, let us present our bodies as living sacrifices. Do you remember that? Living sacrifices, holy and acceptable to Yahweh, which is our reasonable service. Let's break it down a little bit. Brothers, okay, we know the part we've been taught. It's not just everybody, women, men, children, based on the work that we do. What does the word appeal mean? I appeal to you, brothers, sisters, children. Appeal is a plea. I am pleading with you. I am urging you. Can you make yourselves living sacrifices? Why? It's a reasonable service. We can do it. How much of ourselves are we giving towards Yahweh's great work? A living sacrifice. So you said to me, well, I was in the olden days. Okay. Yeshua was the perfect sacrifice. Let me ask you. What does a living sacrifice wear? What kind of clothes does a living sacrifice use? What kinds of food does a living sacrifice eat? Does a living sacrifice have a telephone? Does she have a computer? What does she Google on her telephone? Can we make ourselves living sacrifices, which is a reasonable service? The Peaceful Solution Character Education Program teaches us your reputation precedes you. What reputation precedes a living sacrifice? Is it? Or is it, oh, buenos dias, sister, my great sister. Shalom to you. How are you, ¿Cómo estás? What reputation precedes a living sacrifice? In what capacity, or what do you think Yahweh is in full control? What does that mean to a living sacrifice? What does it mean to the living sacrifice? Can we make ourselves living sacrifices? A reasonable service. You said to me, days of old. Okay. Yeshua, the perfect sacrifice. Hebrews 12:2 tell us, look into Yeshua, the first who was led and perfected by the faith. Look into Yeshua, the first who was led and perfected by the faith, who for the joy that was set before him, and recently somebody said, I heard it twice. They said, it seems that we forget our future. Do not forget your future. Look into Yeshua, the first who was led and perfected by the faith, who for the joy that was set before him, do not forget your future. Who for the joy that was set before him, do not forget your future. Who for the joy that was set before him, do not forget your future. Suffered the sacrifice. He endured the sacrifice. Don't forget Kepha. Kepha said, don't hang me up, down, hang me feet up. You remember that? Head down. Did these people make themselves living sacrifices? What about Mother Sarah? Did Father Abraham tell her, Yahweh said to take the boy to let him be the sacrifice? What do you think Mother Sarah said, sisters? Anybody? What did Mother Sarah say? She said, well, my ruler has his clean socks, has his clean robe, has his clean belt. On the other hand, curse the day that I was born. That's what Eob said, no? You don't think Mother Sarah said that? Was she a female being? Has his nice things. But on the other hand, and she grieved. True or false? So you said to me, but today, living sacrifices today? I said to you, of course. Look around you. Look around you. When he comes on the podium, coughing, sneezing, tissue, mucus, cough, thing. Scratch that yakadan. Look it overhead up there. I might be sick, but I have to teach the message. I might get you sick, but I have to teach the message. Is it a living sacrifice? I might make you sick. And I am so glad when he does that. Why you think so? That's the only time my diet can work. Don't tell him I said that. That's the only time. Cross that. Here goes my dinner, so I don't have to eat my dinner. Here goes my supper. And if he does, it's a lot. Tissue, just nothing. Next morning, no breakfast for me, and my diet is working. Now, in the cold, we're talking about living sacrifices today. You with me? In the cold morning, sleet, vehicles are packed over, they can't drive. Snow, cold thingy. we're driving up to get our coffee. Cold mornings. And those of you who like your eggs wrap fried over, driving up in the cold. And when we get there for my coffee, hot, cold, sweet, 3 sugars, black coffee, nice. When we get there, their cars are already up there. Dark lights on. What time did they get up there? Is this living sacrifices, sisters? What time they got up there? I can call some living sacrifices on the phone. Living sacrifices, I can call them on the phone. I say, you did not cross the T's and put the dots on all those letters right here. Can you do that? Yes. And when you finish doing that, can you space all those spaces for me really nice? Okay. And can you go ahead and make me copies? Some for the boy teachers, some for the girls? Okay, how many copies? I'll tell you later. And can you give me some designs on this side? Nice designs for the girls, nice for the boys? Yes. And can you space everything nice with the proofreading because you did not do all my corrections? Yes. And I'll call you back how many copies I need, okay? Yes. And tomorrow, just to let you know, we can't come today too long at the computer. Is that living sacrifices? Living sacrifices today. Somebody has to do the job. Do not forget, we were told last week his name is not Solomon. His name is Shalom. We were told, yes, last Sabbath, sorry. Don't forget what the great wise king Shalom said. He said, Yahweh came to him in a dream, and Yahweh said to him, Shalom, ask me what you want. Shalom said, Father, I don't need anything right now. Just give me some wisdom, a discerning heart, and a little understanding, you know. And Yahweh said, are you sure that's all you want? And Yahweh was pleased with his answer. He said, yes, to take care of this crowd of people, so many people. Give me a discerning heart and understanding, that's all. Yahweh said, all righty then, I'll give you, since you did not ask for all those fancy honor, your enemy's heads, all these things, I'll give you so much wisdom, more than every king before you and every king after you. You remember that? And then I will add to it riches for you, said Yahweh to Shalom. Then Shalom said, everything he wanted, he just got, there was peace around him in the nations. Then he said, for example, all these maidens are available. Yes, great king. I'll have 50 over here, 25 over there. You remember that? It's in the scriptures. But he said, at the end of it all, when all was done and said, the great wise king Shalom said, let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter. What did he say? Reverence Yahweh by keeping his law, for this is the whole duty of mankind. In essence, he was saying, let us, Father, show us how to make ourselves living sacrifices, which is our reasonable service. Do you see it? Reverence Yahweh by keeping his law, for this is the whole duty of man. In essence, making ourselves living sacrifices to Yahweh's work, which is our reasonable service. And with this I will end, and don't forget, in the meantime, check out the lovely benefits of frankincense in your foods. Okay, praise Yahweh.
Shalom, you may be seated. The title of my speech is We Must Inherit to Share It. Choose it or lose it. We must inherit to share it. Choose it or lose it. Now, I want to ask everybody, what is this? What is it? Does anyone know what it is? It's a book of Yahweh. That's right. Our children know what it is. Turn to Hebrews 9, everyone, please. Hebrews 9. Because it's more than just a book of Yahweh. Hebrews 9, I'm going to read 16 through 18. Hebrews 9, 16 through 18. And it says right here, the purpose of the death of the Redeemer. So verse 16, it says, for where there is a last will and testament, it is also necessary for the death of the testator to be established. For a testament takes effect only at death, since it is not in force as long as the one who made it is alive. And indeed, we find even the first agreement to Yahweh's covenant was not put into effect without the shedding of blood. Now, I want us to look at this differently from now on. Testament. The world calls it an Old Testament and a New Testament. We know that this is the testimony of Yahweh, right? This is a will. And this is how I want you to look at this from now on. This is a will. What is a will? Do we know? A will is full of things that will be given to people who inherit, right? A will is something that someone gives instructions to my daughter. If she's still in then she will receive this. My son, so and so, and you have to qualify. You can't just try to go to a lawyer's office and just any lawyer and just say, I'm here because George Smith died, and I want a little cut in his will. They're going to say, well, who are you? Where are you written in this will? How do you qualify for this inheritance? Wouldn't they ask you that? How many of you want to qualify for Yahweh's inheritance? Oh, I know I do. Now, we're going to have to kind of fly through here, but I want to start by talking about the fact that we have to be family members in order to inherit, right? You have to be family members. Yahweh's not going to just be handing all this out to strangers. Hey, I don't know you. Here, you can have this planet. You can do. No, we have to be proven family members. And we're family members that are born into this family. It's not like the family in the world where, you have your mom and your dad and these are your siblings. We're born in a different kind of way. And we have to work really hard to become these family members, and we don't have a lot of time to do it now. I want to start by talking about family and influences, because in the character unit, page 4, it's what molds our character. All of us that have been taking this character education course know. Genetics, family values, influences, right? Environment, choices and experiences. Now think about it. What are our family values, and what family do we value? This family right here in this building should be the family that we value. Not Uncle Joe, Uncle Tim, Aunt Susie, right? This is your family. If you want to inherit, remember, you have to inherit. You have to inherit to share it. Choose it or lose it. So the influences, what are we influenced by? Do we go to class? Are we influenced by classes and sermons or other things? Values. What do we value? Do we value the people of Yahweh? Do we value going to the classes and taking this education that's been offered to us? Do we value the new moons and the classes that pastors provided for us so that we can become like Yahweh? Our overseer wants us to become part of this family so badly. Choices. What choices do we make? Do we choose to come to class? Do we choose to pay attention in services? Do we choose to forgive others? Do we choose to hold grudges? Do we choose to acknowledge our family members? Do we choose to want to be a part of this great family? Do we choose to go to work each day? Do we choose to be living sacrifices? Choices. And then our experiences, that's all based on what we choose to do. We can put ourselves in experiences with unbelievers or with believers doing the work, right? Fellowshipping with people on social media that have fallen away, like one speaker brought out. I want everyone to turn to Revelation 22, verse 14, because we have to get into this quickly. Revelation 22, verse 14. And it says, "Blessed are those who keep his laws, that they may have right to the tree of life and may enter in through the gates into the city." This is part of the inheritance. You're not going to have the right to enter in unless you inherit that right. It's an inherited right. Raise your hand if you want to go in that city. Now, let's see what Israel Hawkins says about this inherited right. The 12th book of Israel, part 1, chapter 23, verse 23. 12th book of Israel, part 1, chapter 23, verse 23. And it says, "And Yeshua said then, Blessed are those who keep the Father's laws, for they will have right to the kingdom of Yahweh, the kingdom of heaven. They have right of inheritance," our overseer says. The others don't have any inheritance. You can't inherit something if it's not yours. You can't inherit something if it's not yours. That's what the overseer says. Now, we learned in the ownership unit that inheritance is one of the ways that you can obtain something honestly, right? So you think you're going to be sliding in there if you don't earn it? We have to earn it. Acts 20, verse 32. Acts 20, verse 32. And it says, "And now, brothers, I commend you to Yahweh and to the law, which he gave, which is able to build up the house of Yahweh and is able to give you an inheritance among those who are saints." What are you talking about? The law can give me this inheritance? Let's see what Pastor says about that. In the second book of Israel, 25, chapter 25, verse 65. Pastor says, "Remember what we read there in Acts 20, verse 32. This law is able to give you an inheritance among those who are saints, who Yahweh has judged as keeping his law faithfully and actually loving his law." Right? The second book of Israel. Love that book. Chapter 8, verse 92. This is a kingdom that we are speaking of here. This great kingdom that Yahweh himself is building. Keep in mind, this is speaking of the whole house of Yahweh. Yeshua being the groom, the house of Yahweh to inherit all things, and are actually born into spirit beings into the family of Yahweh. Now, there's no way to be born into this family without hard work. It's not like a woman having a child. It's not like that. It takes how many of you women ever had children? Okay, you got your hands up. Was it easy? I'm telling you, to be born into this family is harder than what you went through when you went through labor. The second book of Israel, chapter 18, verses 61 and 78. See where the power comes from? It comes from the ones who are actually born into the Yahweh family. Through an inheritance, we will inherit all these powers and all this authority. Authority to bring this earth to peace at last. I want everyone to really go home and read that verse. Second book of Israel, chapter 18, verse 61, because we're going to have the power and authority to bring peace at last. I'm here to tell you that the pastor has set up the certification course for the peaceful solution, and that is what is going to give you your authority to go bring this peace at last. Now, I'm not going to ask for a show of hands of those who are not coming to the classes to qualify for that authority. But what I want you to do is to think to yourself, am I doing what I need to do in order to get this inheritance? because this takes hard work. It doesn't matter how long you've been in the house of Yahweh. You haven't been here so long that you should not be in these classes qualifying for this great job that will be given by inheritance. Okay? Verse 78. Now all of this is done. Remember Hebrews 1:4. Through inheritance, because you must inherit this. In order to receive this honor, you must inherit it, and you must qualify for this inheritance. The way you qualify is by learning. How do you learn and where do you learn? How do you learn and where do you learn? Well, you're doing some of it today and every Sabbath day, but the overseer has provided the classes as well, right? Remember, we will inherit it to share it. We have to inherit to share it. So it says the way that you qualify is by learning and then practicing. Revelation 21 verse 7. Revelation 21 verse 7. He who overcomes will inherit all things. I will be his father and he will be my son or child. Now let's see what Pastor has to say about that scripture. In the fourth book of Israel, Reverencing Yahweh, number 14, verse 92, Pastor says, in Revelation 21:7, it says, he who overcomes will inherit all things. He who overcomes will inherit all things. This same thing was promised to Abraham. It's based on one thing. It's conditional. Write that down if you're taking notes. No, it doesn't matter who you're married to. No, it doesn't matter who your mom is or your dad is or your Uncle Joe or Ted or anybody. My second brother, cousin, niece 5 times removed is a Kohan. I'm in. No, it's conditional. It's conditional to inherit all things, brethren. This universe is so vast, you can't even imagine the things that Yahweh's going to give you. But you have to qualify. And in order to qualify, you have to put your hand to the plow and not look back. 1 Corinthians 2:9. But as it is written, eye has not seen nor ear heard, neither have entered into the mind of man the things which Yahweh has prepared for this inheritance for those who love him. Fourth book of Israel, the reverence of Yahweh, number 12. Chapter 12, verse 160. In Matthew 25, verse 34, then the king will say to those on his right hand, come, you blessed of my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. This was the same promise that was made to Abraham. Man, that guy's mentioned twice here. He's going to receive it. Yahweh plainly says he will receive it because Abraham kept Yahweh's laws, statutes, and judgments. If you're the seed of Abraham, you'll do the same thing. Matthew 5, this is your homework because I don't have time. They're already giving me the stop sign. Matthew 5 is your homework. Read the Beatitudes, all of them. Blessed are you that blessed. But I decided, and I'm not a numbers girl either, but Matthew 5 verse 12, it says, rejoice and be exceedingly glad, for greatest is your reward in heaven. Okay? I decided to put that in the gematria. Tomato, I'm not quite sure. I'm not a numbers person. But I put in the gematria calculator, rejoice and be exceedingly glad, for greatest is your reward in heaven. It was Jewish number 4865. Now, in Strong's, number 4865 means a setting of a gem. From 7660, to interweave threads in squares, by implication of reticulation, to encase gems in gold, embroider, or to set. Immediately it brought my mind, and hopefully brought yours, to Malachi 3:16 and 17, where it says, then those who reverenced Yahweh spoke often one to another at the classes and at the Sabbath services. And Yahweh paid attention and heard them. And a book of remembrance was written in his presence of those who gave reverence to Yahweh and qualified, and who thought upon, considered, and regarded his name. And they will be mine, says Yahweh of hosts, in that day When I make up my jewels, I will spare them as a man spares his own son who serves him. So, character unit, page 4. Remember our choices. So when we pray and we're asking Yahweh to make us into what he wants us to be, because that's what we want to be, remember, he's setting us in gold. He's building us and he's placing us in our offices. Whatever we've qualified for is the only thing that we will lawfully receive. And with this, I'd like to turn the podium over to the great priest in the House of Yahweh. Yahweh bless you.